Okay, the standard form for the equation of a parabola is y minus k is equal to a times x minus h squared. And in this form, the vertex is hk, so put h comma k, and the number a determines whether the parabola points upward or downward. So if a is a positive number, in other words, bigger than 0, then the parabola will point up like this, okay? And if a is less than 0, then the parabola points downward like this. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to try to get a quadratic function written in this standard form so that we can determine whether the parabola points up or down. And if the parabola points up, then the lowest point is the vertex, and that's a minimum point. And that can only happen with parabolas that open upward. So that is a minimum value. Okay? And likewise, if a is less than 0, then that means the parabola points downward, and the vertex is a maximum point. So that's the highest point on the graph. So let's take a look at an example. So we have y equals 2x squared minus 4x plus 5. And in order to write this in standard form, we're going to have to move around terms and do what is called completing the square, okay? And so I'll go over how to do that. Well, when it's written in this way, I am going to subtract the 5 first from each side, so that gives me y minus 5 is equal to 2x squared minus 4x. So that's a good first step, and I would do that with all of the problems like this that have a constant term like 5. Move it over to the other side of the equation because that's the value of k. So I already know part of what the vertex is. But to find h, we have to do a little bit of maneuvering and completing the square, basically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite y minus 5 because that's not going to change. And what I'm going to do is I am going to factor out a 2 like so. Okay? So notice I haven't changed anything. I just simply factored out a 2 from the right side of the equation. Now I'm going to set this up for completing the square. So I'm going to write everything out again. So y minus 5 is equal to 2 times x squared minus 2x plus blank. Okay? And that blank is going to help me to factor what's inside the parentheses. So let me show you how this works. So just look inside the parentheses. We have x squared minus 2x plus 1, right? So we want to know what goes in the blank. Well, that's always going to be half of what this is. That's b. That's the coefficient b. It's going to be half of what that is squared. So ask yourself, what's half of negative 2? Well, it's negative 1, right? And negative 1 squared is 1. Okay? So that 1 is going to be really helpful. Okay? That's going to enable us to factor that. But there's one more thing I need to do. Now, we have, we have a new number that I added here. It's a 1. And not only that, if you use the distributive property, we have the 2 outside here. So now we've added a 2 times 1 to the equation, and that throws everything out of balance. So we have to make a mental note of that and say, well, we've added this 2 to the right side of the equation, which throws it out of balance. So I'm going to compensate for that by subtracting 2. Okay, now let's leave all of that there. So y minus 5 is equal to 2. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use the fact that this is a perfect square trinomial. This whole thing is a perfect square trinomial. It factors x minus 1 squared. We still have the minus 2 out here. Okay? So we're in a really good position now because now it's starting to look a lot like this, isn't it? Okay? So what we can do now is we have this minus 2 out here. So what I'm going to do is add it to both sides. So I'm going to add 2 to both sides of the equation. That would give us y minus 3 is equal to 2 times x minus 1 squared. You see how that works? I added 2 to both sides. So when I add 2 here, they cross out. When I add 2 over here, I'm just going to write that real small. We have negative 5 plus 2 is minus 3. Okay, and now we have all the information we need here. The vertex, so the vertex is HK, so it's going to be 1, 3. All right, and this value, the value of A, which is just outside the parentheses, is 2. So A is equal to 2. Okay, and notice that A is greater than 0. So that means that I know the parabola points up like this. I'm going to draw a little mini graph here. Okay, and there's the vertex, 1, 3. Okay, so just by knowing what the vertex is, I can say that the it doesn't have a minimum value, a maximum value, pardon me, but it does have a minimum value. And that minimum value is the y value. That's how high up it is. Okay, so the minimum value is 3. And again, we did all of this by completing the square to write it in standard form. You identify the vertex, which we did, and the value of A, which we did. And that'll tell you right away whether you have a maximum or minimum value. In this case, we have a minimum value of 3.